if you have a baby who's dysregulated or like a preemie who needs extra support, you can actually see like they've had babies hooked up to vital signs monitors, put them skin to skin, put them in a carrier, and you can see the immediate improvement. And it's got lasting effects for both the parent and the baby for hours after that session is over.
Oh
So
my
it's just
God.
incredible the amount of benefits there are.
Hey, y'all, and welcome back to another episode of the Birth Lounge podcast. I am such a huge fan of baby wearing. I talk about it all the time, I feature it in my content. It's something I teach to new parents as a way to A, free up their hands, and B, bond with their baby deeper. It's also a really awesome way to slip in that skin to skin that we know is so beneficial. But when you are also freshly postpartum, it can kind of feel a little overwhelming to try and have to fit in everything. So, baby wearing, in my opinion, is a way to almost habit stack so you can get multiple benefits while baby wearing, and maybe even find some time to answer an email or scroll or do the dishes or fold some laundry. I also love baby wearing when out and about. Not only is it a wonderful way to keep people from asking to hold your baby or getting in your baby's face, but it's also a really convenient way to run errands or grocery shop or even have a beer at the local brewery. But did you know that there is actually a right and wrong way to wear your baby? Well, there is. So we could actually cause some harm to our baby if we're not doing it correctly. And that's exactly what I want to tackle in today's episode. I'm so excited to have Jordan Morillo on the show, who is a perinatal health OT, certified baby wearing consultant, and toddler mom who is super passionate about empowering families with the knowledge that they need to baby wear safely, comfortably, and with confidence. Jordan provides expert parent support through worldwide virtual one-to-one consultations, home health services, and by sharing free resources and tutorials on her social media, which is how I found her. In today's show, we're going to talk about why the height at which you wear your baby really matters. What is lateral snugness and why that matters? And then also, how can you properly support your baby's growth and development by baby wearing? Plus, we're going to tackle the fear that so many people have of, can my baby breathe in there? I also asked Jordan about her favorite baby wearing brands and which carriers are best for certain situations. And if this is not your first baby, we're also going to talk about tandem wearing, which is wearing more than one child at once, and nursing in a carrier, plus how big is too big to wear your baby? And on the opposite end of that spectrum, how small is too small to be baby wearing? And of course, we wouldn't dare leave out our NICU or medically complex families. We're also going to discuss how you can safely wear your babies and which carriers are safest for you guys. There is no such thing as a spoiled or too clingy baby, and I'm here to help you understand the unexpected benefits of baby wearing, plus how it can actually help make your life easier, get your baby the sensory input that they need, and possibly even get you better sleep at night. Without further ado, Jordan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. So happy to be here.
I'm so stoked to have you. Obviously, baby wearing is super important to me. I talk about
Mhm.
it a lot online with the benefits and how convenient it is in life. And now that I'm expecting my own little one, I've been telling everyone how much I'm looking forward to baby wearing. But one of the things that I also have learned over 10 years of being a doula is there's a lot of fear around baby wearing. And this is just something
Mhm.
that fortunately for me, unfortunately for my audience, I have not ever been able to relate to. I've been baby wearing for many years, even before I was a doula. And so for me, it feels very natural and normal and instinctual. And so when I became a doula and I realized that parents feel very inept, unqualified to
Mhm.
baby wear. There's so much confusion about baby wearing. How do I know it's safe? How do I know my baby is breathing? How do I know they're in the right position? How do I know what carrier to get? I was blown away. And so I'm super excited for this conversation. And we're going to tackle all those questions, you guys. But I think a really great place for us to start is at the basics. So when we think about baby wearing, what are some of the key safety components that we want to think of in terms of guidelines that will guide us in baby wearing?
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's some key concepts that are the same no matter how old your baby is, no matter what carrier type you're using. And so that's really what I like to teach parents so that they know what to look for. And I like the ABCs. Some people use TICS guidelines. You guys can look those up. Those are great as well. But I just feel like those are harder to remember. ABCs just seems to click in people's heads a little bit more. So the A in ABC stands for airway. So what we're looking for there is that their head is in a neutral alignment. It's okay if they're turned to the side or they're leaning, but we don't want to see head hanging way back and we don't want to see chin to chest because those are risks for positional asphyxiation. So we really just want to see a nice supported, aligned, clear airway, and your baby should be breathing just comfortably relaxed. We shouldn't be hearing any gasping or noticing any like apnea or anything like that. So we just want calm baby, breathing comfortably. The B in the ABC stands for body positioning. So that's where we're looking at things like hip health. So we like to see a spread squat position with their knees at least a little bit higher or in line with their bottom. So it will look like a letter M if you're looking at it, from like a front view or a back view. And that is true even into toddlerhood. We're not so much concerned with like hip health anymore once they start becoming more mobile and weight bearing on their own hips, but it's for comfort and it's for ideal like hip positioning and spinal alignment. And those things also help protect their airway because when they're well supported and they have that good trunk control, that gives them better head and neck control while they're asleep or when they're little and awake and don't have head control yet. We're looking for that like optimal body positioning. As an OT, I also like to throw in keeping their hands up near their face because babies love having access to their hands. It's developmentally supportive, and that can also help protect their airway because they're less likely to slump if they can rest their hands on your chest versus if their hands are pinned down into the carrier. So I love that for body positioning. And then the C stands for comfort. We're looking for the carrier to be comfortably snug. It should feel like you are moving as one person with your baby. You shouldn't feel like a lag if you move and then it's like they move later or big pockets of space. It shouldn't feel like they're low and the carrier's pulling down on you. You want to see them like high and tight, resting on your chest, but also not overly tight. Sometimes parents get so scared of not tightening enough that they over tighten and then they can't breathe. We don't want that. You should be able to take a good deep breath, but still feel like your baby is snug and secure. And if you feel confident that they're snug, it's probably snug enough. Should feel like a good pair of pants. So those are the basics we're looking for: airway, body positioning, and comfort. And that's true for newborns and that's true for toddlers.
Cool. I love that so much. I've actually never heard of the ABCs of baby wearing before, so that's really fascinating. I want to dive in more to that M position of their legs
Yes.
because it's something that I teach all parents because we know, or maybe you don't, maybe you're listening and this is new information, so that's wonderful. This is something you want to know. Young babies are really prone to hip dysplasia if we are not properly supporting that hip mobility and their hip development. Dive a little bit more into if we do let their legs hang, what are some of the risks that we're taking on?
Yeah, so I always tell parents, you will not cause hip dysplasia from scratch if your baby didn't already have risk factors. But the thing is, not all babies get caught right at birth that they might have hip dysplasia. I've had a few clients who had babies that were 8 or 9 months old before they realized that there was some hip dysplasia going on there. It was mild enough that they were able to fix it with conservative means. But had they been in poorly positioning them this entire time, it could have been a moderate or a severe case instead. If you have a baby who has risk factors for hip dysplasia, this is even more important. But I think just for all parents, it's important to support the hip health. And so, what you're looking for there is when babies are young, their joints are just not quite formed all the way yet. They're very soft. We're still working on getting all of the muscles and the fascia and the bones all lined up together. And so we want to see a deep hip socket because a deep hip socket is what's going to support healthy hips and walking and just comfort as you continue to grow and start to weight bear on your legs. And so we want to see them in what we call an M seat, where their knees are at least in line or ideally a little bit higher than their bottom, because that means that the head of the bone at the top of their leg is interacting with that hip joint in a way that's creating a deeper socket. It's helping to form a deeper groove. And so we want to see a deeper hip socket because that's a smoother articulation point for the leg bone and the hip joint to work together. If we have a very shallow hip socket, we're more at risk for things like dislocation. We're at risk for like arthritis later in life, or just like discomfort as we're moving. And so the nice thing about carriers is if you look at hip dysplasia braces, the Pavlik harness, or some of the older braces, a proper position in baby carrier mimics the positioning that happens with a hip dysplasia brace. And so if you can get babies in that nice M seat, you are setting them up for success. But if their legs are dangling below their bottom, you could potentially be putting them at an increased risk of a more severe case of hip dysplasia if they already have it. Or even if your baby doesn't have hip dysplasia, we want them to be comfortable and we want their joints to be optimally aligned and we want them to not have tension. And so, even if you're not worried about hip dysplasia, if you have a baby whose legs are dangling and being pulled down by gravity, and think about like when you sit on a bike seat or like a bar stool with no support for your feet and your legs are just dangling, it's not as comfortable. And so we want our babies to be comfortable and we don't want them to have tension on their spine and their hips. So just across the board, having that nice, deep, supportive seat with a carrier that's supporting the thighs and keeping the knees up is just better for all babies.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize that what we do in this first early days, weeks, and months can actually impact us for years and
Mm-hmm.
decades down the road. I mean, and we're talking about like crawling development, gait development, all
Yeah.
the way to what you said, like arthritis later in life. It's wild to think, man, is my arthritis in my 70s caused by the way that my mom carried me when I was a tiny baby? Or, did it make me more prone to this? Which leads me to my next question about what signs would we be looking for? Or like, how would we know if we had an inoptimal carry? How would we know if something was wrong with the way that we were wearing our baby?
Yeah. So, the first thing I always tell parents is check your intuition. If you put your baby in a carrier and you're like, I don't know, they just look weird or it feels weird, something feels off, something is probably off. A lot of parents are so worried that they're like not going to know. Most people know that something feels a little strange. But the other thing that we want to look for is just so if we're talking about positioning, we want that M seat. We want, if we were looking at baby from the side, we want to see like a gentle curve of the spine. Some people call it a C curve, but then I feel like people get really caught up in that when they're like older baby isn't so flexed. So really just a smooth curve from the nape of the neck to the bottom of the bottom. You wouldn't want to see like a divot if they're like pancaked to you, and you don't want to see them crumpled down into the carrier either. The carrier is acting as a way to support their position on your body. Your body as the adult is actually what's giving them the most support. So what we really want to focus on is having full contact with your chest and making sure they're at a high position on your body, because right here on top of our chest is firm tissue. This is a safe, firm sleep surface versus if baby's head is down on our chest or down on our stomach, that's a lot of soft, movable tissue that as we move, as we bend, as we twist, that's a lot of room for babies to slump or to get smushed into something that doesn't support their airways. So we want babies to be be positioned high on our chest. We want them to be snug against our bodies. And then the carrier should just be supporting that. So we're looking for no big pockets of space on the side. We're looking for a carrier that doesn't come up past the bottom of the earlobe, ideally the nape of the neck, so that they get a little bit of like trunk and neck support, but really still have that freedom of movement. We have visibility of the airways. Then we're just, again, looking for everything to feel snug and supportive, comfortable for both of you. And we're looking for those positioning things we've talked about, the M seat, the curved spine, the hands unpinned, all of that good stuff.
I love that so much. I never realized that, having their hands up by them will help them brace a little bit more. I just
Mm-hmm.
naturally do it just because
Yeah.
it feels intuitive to me, but
Yes.
not because I realized there was any data or science behind that. So
Yeah,
that's
there's so many
really,
benefits.
really cool. Yeah. And we know that babies like to chew on and
Yes.
on their hands. So it's just nice to have access to their hands for sure. Okay. My next question is, when we go to pick a carrier, it can
Mm-hmm.
feel so overwhelming because it feels like there are thousands of carriers out
There
there.
probably are.
You've got soft shell carriers, you've got the wrapped carriers, you've got what we call hard carriers. First of all,
Mm-hmm.
how do we know the difference? And second of all, are we picking carriers based on our baby's age and development, or are we picking it off of preference? Are we picking it off of other factors that might influence this?
Yeah, so when I teach parents about carriers, I teach like general categories, which help them break them up. We've got the stretchy wraps, which are, I think, what a lot of families here in the US start with. That's your Solly baby, things like that. Those like soft, stretchy, they come tied in one position, you wear them the same, and then like your baby outgrows them once they get heavier and they start to get saggy. So we've got stretchy wraps. The flip side of that is woven wraps, which are woven fabric that is sized to the adult's body and is like these long, big, beautiful pieces of fabric. That's your simple piece of cloth that people started out with baby wearing like ancestrally back in our past. And those can be tied in a variety of different ways. So if someone wants something just for the newborn stage, I might point them to a stretchy wrap. But if they want a wrap that's going to grow until they're done carrying their baby, I might point them to a woven wrap because that one's going to span the lifespan of their baby wearing journey. You've got ring slings, which are similar to wraps, but are a single shoulder carry and can be used from birth through toddlerhood as well. Usually birth to 35 pounds is what we're looking at there. You've got your half buckle carriers, which have a buckle at the waist, but have long woven style wrap straps for the shoulders. So you get this nice in between of a wrap and like a structured carrier where you have a guaranteed seat and a body panel, but you have a lot of diversity that you can do with the shoulders. Those come with buckle waist, ring waist, waist. You've got all sorts of different options there. You've got your full buckle carriers, which I think, again, in the States, very popular. Those are like your Ergo babies, your Tulas, your Baby Bjorns, the ones that people run into at Target and they're like, oh, that looks easy, which is a whole nother thing we could get into. I have thoughts about, oh, buckle carriers are the easiest, but those are your typical body panel with buckle shoulders and a buckle waist. And then we have your Ambu Hemos, which are a Japanese style and Asian based carrier that has no waistband and just has straps. Sometimes they unbuckle, sometimes they're just completely connected, and they are for high back carries for an older baby who can sit unassisted. So we have those as well. And then, of course, we've got all of the hybrids and all of the other things that more like traditional baby wearing that, maybe we don't have access to here, but other communities have access to, like your cradle boards and things like that. But I think as far as how you pick, it totally depends. When I do a consultation with someone, we look at so many factors. For the adult, we look at their size, like their height, their shirt size, because some carriers are more size inclusive than others. Some are going to have more material on the straps, more padding for a taller adult, or for someone with a larger chest, they have different options to buckle in different places to avoid like exacerbating mastitis or anything like that if people are struggling with clogged ducts. So we look at the adult's body, we look at the baby, if we've got like a preemie, obviously we're going to pick different options than like a 10-pound newborn, right? So you've got some diversity there. And then we're looking at, to some extent, stage and development, but really what's more influenced there is the types of positioning you might use and how your baby might interact with the carrier rather than like what carrier you pick other than the stretchy wrap, which most people move on from, as their baby grows because it's just so limited to that one position. We're looking at lifestyle goals. Are you wanting to wear around the house? Are you wanting to wear for outings? Are you hoping to be more active? Are you hoping for something more for contact napping? Do you want to nurse or bottle feed in the carrier? Then we're also looking at budget. We're looking at ethical preferences. Do you want natural fibers? Do you want made in a certain place or manufactured a certain way? And we're looking at climate. If you live somewhere very hot and humid all the time, your carrier selection might be different than someone who lives in milder weather, who has all four seasons. And then we're just looking at, support needs for both. If you have a baby with low tone or a baby who's got reflux and is stuck in like extension patterns, they're going to need a different kind of support in their carrier than like a baby who is just relaxed into the carrier. Or if the adult has like chronic shoulder pain or a history of scoliosis or something, we're going to be like looking at different carrier factors. So it is so nuanced and so individualized to the person. And I think sometimes we get really caught up in trying to find carriers based on registry lists, or my friend loved this one, so I'm going to pick this one, or I saw ads on social media for this one, so I'm going to pick this one. And then people get sad when it's not the right fit for their body because they don't know all of the factors that go into finding your best fit when the market is so diverse.
And this is why we don't give in to fads, you guys. This is why we don't just go with what everyone's ranting and raving
Yeah.
about, because you never know what those people actually know about baby wearing. They
Yeah.
may not know anything about baby wearing, and so they don't have anything to compare it to. Okay, Jordan, I'm a big fan of the wrap, so I love the
Yeah.
Sisley and like the Boba and the Moby. Those are my
Yes.
fave, right? What is wrong with me that I cannot get a ring sling? I do not like them. I find them very like nerve-wracking, especially for tiny babies that don't have head control. I
That's
am
so
like
funny.
so scared of them. I've tried for literally a decade to try and make them work, and I can't get them to work. So do you have tips, or is it true that sometimes like some carriers just aren't a good fit for your personality?
I mean, every once in a while you will find a carrier that just doesn't work for you, but the ring sling is so diverse. I'm betting
It's
that's
a me
probably
problem.
not the case. I feel like usually I say that more about buckle carriers where it's like, okay, like your wife is 5'2" and you're 6'4", and you're not going to be able to share the same buckle carrier comfortably if you want that buckle carrier. It's more like that. The ring slings are pretty diverse. I'm betting what's happening is I feel like a lot of people don't understand tensioning the ring sling correctly, and that you should be thinking about it in thirds, like a top, middle, and a bottom section, and you should be managing the tail accordingly. And so, if you want to tighten the top edge, you would pull on the inner edge of the tail. If you want to tighten the bottom, you would pull on the outer edge of the tail. I think a lot of times people just try to pull randomly, and then they end up with like weird pockets of space. And the other thing that I feel like people struggle with a lot is they make their pocket too big. You
Mm.
want to make your pocket where your baby's going to sit so small that you're like, this is maybe almost too small for me to comfortably get them in. This is my final pocket size, and I might have to slip them in a little, then you have less fabric to manage. And if you have this huge pocket, you've got this tiny baby, you're trying to manage their head, you've got a bunch of fabric, you're trying to move across them and tighten, and then there's like weird, uneven slack happening. That's stressful and that's hard. But if you can get your pocket as close to in a product as possible, slip your baby in, and maybe you just have to tighten a little tiny bit here and there, then you've got a beautiful fit. And you can use ring slings from birth. I actually love them. They're one of my favorite carriers for the newborn stage. So as far as like the head control goes, I think really more it's about positioning and getting that tension of the top edge correct and getting them in that nice little flexed position. I mean, it's so nice for like nursing and skin to skin. It's a great option, but they are intimidating. People are intimidated by them because there's a lot to think about. But then once you get it, I mean, I can get my toddler from asleep in the car seat to in a ring sling in probably 15 seconds flat. It's fast, but you have to put the work in, you
And
know?
that's how I feel about a wrap, right? I can
Yeah.
a wrap so easy in my sleep with my eyes closed, having a full-blown
But
conversation.
at one point you couldn't. And a lot of parents feel the way that you feel about ring slings about wraps. So
Ah, Yeah, I resonate with that. I hear a lot of people just saying it's so complicated. I'm like, it's really not. And just what you said, like practice really does make perfect. The more
Yeah.
that you do it, the more comfortable you'll be, the better that you'll be, and the more versatile you'll be able to find yourself being able to use that wrap.
Yes.
So you'll start out around your home, and then you might
Mhm.
carry in the grocery store, and then you'll be able to go out and about and wear your baby for hours on end because you feel so comfortable doing it. Okay,
Yeah.
that's helpful. I'm going to give the ring sling another try.
Girl, just hit me
I have a
up.
couple
Send me
of
pictures
them.
or something. I got you.
I'll have to have a consult with you once this baby is here so that you can teach me what to do.
Yeah.
Because yeah, like I say, I have never ever been able to get a ring sling to work. And like I say, it just gives me so much anxiety because I know I'm not doing it right, which
Yeah.
lets me know I don't have the right fit, which lets me that know that the baby's probably uncomfortable
Sure.
and it's not
Yeah.
safe because when you're not wearing properly, then there are some risks
Yeah.
to it. Can you talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, so you really have two main categories of risk when it comes to improper carrier use. You've got injuries related to like falls. Say your carrier wasn't on properly, the buckle wasn't done correctly, like baby is not supported. There is a chance that they could slip out. Or if you have a toddler who is like fighting you in the carrier and you don't have that carrier on right, like they could try to fling themselves out backwards. So we see, fall risks just from like here not supporting the baby properly being one, and then positional asphyxiation is the other big one from babies who are like slumping down into the carriers because their like trunk and airway wasn't properly supported. There's not a high incidence of this. I was actually just looking into these cases the other day. It's been like maybe 20 cases in the last few decades, but that's 20 preventable
Yep.
cases of like infant harm. I think it's not such a large statistic that if you don't need to hyperfixate on it and like, freak yourself out about it to the point that you're scared to baby wear, but it is worth knowing that there are risks involved and like empowering yourself with the knowledge and education you need to know whether the carrier fits right or not so that you do feel confident that your baby's going to be safe when they're on your body.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are risks and benefits with everything, right? The risk
Yeah.
of not baby wearing is that you give up that bond and you don't have the
Yeah.
convenience and you don't have that constant skin to skin that you could have with baby
Mhm.
wearing. I mean, I love baby wearing for so many reasons, and with everything in life, there are risks and benefits. So,
Yeah.
on that same token, on the flip side, let's talk about some benefits for both babies and
Yeah.
adults.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. There's so many. Some of my favorite for the parents are one, there's been proven to be like it's supportive against PMADs, against postpartum mental health and anxiety disorders. So we see even potentially for fathers as well that there's like a decreased risk of postpartum mental health conditions related to baby wearing because of the oxytocin release that happens, because of the bonding, the sense of empowerment, the ability to get back to activities that matter to you because you don't feel like you're just like trapped on the couch all day. Especially for dads, we see a lot of that powerful bonding happening with baby wearing because sometimes if they're not the one feeding the baby, they're like, okay, I changed diapers and what? And it's and you wear them for a nap and now you're snuggling and you're smelling their little head and you're like bonding with each other. For babies, we also see, it counts as a form of modified tummy time. So if you have a baby who's like not tolerating traditional tummy time down on the floor for whatever reason, while you're working on the root cause of that, you can get some of those motor development benefits, some of that vestibular input, some of the various proprioceptive input from baby wearing. We also see earlier recognition of feeding cues. So we're like parents notice that babies are hungry before they cry because they're right there. So they might notice the rooting or the hand sucking or whatever. So we see decreased cry time and we see more responsive and more frequent feeding, which could be really supportive of baby's growth. And also, if you're on a breastfeeding journey, can be very supportive of that as well. I mean, I could just go on and on. There's so many good benefits. We see regulation of vital signs. The adult and the baby will sync up breathing rate, heart rate, body temperature. So it's like crazy. If you have a baby who's dysregulated or like a preemie who needs extra support, you can actually see like they've had babies hooked up to vital signs monitors put them skin to skin, put them in a carrier, and you can see the immediate improvement. And it's got lasting effects for both the parent and the baby for hours after that session is over.
Oh
So
my
it's just
God.
incredible the amount of benefits there are.
I love that so much. And I think a lot of parents who have preemies or NICU babies are extra fearful, right? We opened up
Yeah.
the episode talking about that there's a lot of fear around baby wearing. We want to make sure that
Yeah.
we're getting it right. We want to make sure we chose the right carrier. We want to make sure that we're doing it safely. We want to have confidence in doing it as the parents. And then when you have a baby that is medically complex or has spent time in the NICU, then you have this extra added layer of
Mhm.
anxiety that unfortunately just is par for the course for that experience. So, for our NICU or preemie moms and dads out there, what do they need to know? Are there specific carriers we should be looking at or avoiding? Are there specific or tailored accommodating rules or things that we need to be thinking about when we're wearing our smaller or medically complex children?
Yeah. So I want to speak to this from like a NICU parent experience. My son was not a preemie. He was born on his due date, but we had a NICU stay because of some things that happened during birth. And I'm pretty sure it's the reason I had such bad postpartum anxiety, and baby wearing was transformative for me because it let me know that he was safe and he was okay, and I could monitor his breathing and monitor his well-being without needing all of, you get used to the monitors. Like as much as the monitors cause anxiety, it's also really shocking when you are discharged home and all of a sudden you don't have nurses and doctors and monitors like affirming that your baby's okay. And so you're like happy to be rid of them, but you're also like, whoa, so it's hard. But I think for as far as like for preemies or medically complex infants, some things that we want to think about is that these babies oftentimes need even more support. Depending on how premature your baby was, there are things going on with their development. There's positioning we need to be mindful of. Babies in utero like to be in like more of a flexed position. They like to have hands up near the face, they like to be more curled up, and that is normal. And baby wearing can be supportive of that. But sometimes with our really teeny tiny babies, a lot of times they feel very scrunched. And so parents are worried about, how do I put them in a carrier when they're like in a little ball and they're so tiny, and what am I supposed to do? And so I actually generally recommend ring slings for those folks, or woven wraps, because it's such a thin layer of fabric that you can have a baby whose feet are still pretty close to their bottom, but you can get that fabric in between and like still give them the thigh and the hip and the spinal support that you're looking for. You want carriers that are going to customize to your baby's fit. So wraps and ring slings are going to allow you to get a smaller, snugger, more secure fit with a smaller baby. Whereas, like some of these buckle carriers that might be newborn friendly for a full term infant are not going to necessarily be newborn friendly for a baby who's 4.5, 5, 6 pounds, because they're just a little too small to get a snug fit. There are a couple carriers. There's the Necco Tiny, is a buckle carrier specifically designed for infants 5.5 pounds and up, made for like our premature infants. It is a stretchy wrap buckle carrier hybrid. So it's got all the structure of a buckle carrier, but it has soft, stretchy wrap material. So it's like very snugly and just gives a lot of nice deep pressure to the baby. And then you've also got the Hoppity's Premio, which is another one aimed at 5.5 pounds. That's another buckle carrier specifically designed for smaller babies. And so if parents were feeling nervous about everything else going on and they didn't feel like they could handle the brain power, if they don't have the capacity for like also learning the skill involved in a wrap or a sling at that point, I would probably direct them towards one of those carriers. But we're just really looking to make sure we have that snug fit for a smaller infant, because they often need more support with their airway, and we often have like tone and factors like that coming into play. So
I love to see products on the market be kind of marketed towards or created for specifically our smaller, medically complex,
mm,
NIC preemie babies, because I feel like for so long, literally until very recently, that was a forgotten part of the industry, right?
yeah.
That was a forgotten part of our population. It's your baby's here so they can fit into anything. And you, as better than anyone, know that's not always true. One of the most fascinating things, and it's actually what led me to ask you to be on the podcast, was you're real about
Mhm.
carriers being mismarketed, whether
Yeah.
it's intentional or not, to the weight of baby. So
Yeah.
you had shared that, yes, carriers might be marketed for 7 pounds and up, but it doesn't actually mean that when your baby is 7 pounds, that they are
Mhm.
actually appropriate for said carrier. Tell us what we need to know about this and how do we actually tell if our baby is appropriate for the carriers that we have?
Yeah, so I think something that parents need to know is that when companies are saying safety tested for 7 to 45 pounds or 7 to 35 pounds or whatever it is, what they're meaning is that carrier has passed in here in the US what's called ASTM safety testing. It's a company that is looking more at the durability and the structure of the carrier. So they're doing like flammability testing, they're looking at the integrity of the fabric and the buckles. They're doing what we call a leg hole test, where they drop this little ball like through the leg hole of the carrier to try and make sure that like a baby can't fall out of the leg holes, basically. And they're very important tests. Like, I think that we need to have those tests because we want to know that our carriers are made well, that they're safe for the babies, that they're durable, they're not just going to break and fall apart randomly one day. That is a very important component of manufacturing a carrier. But at no point during safety testing do they look at how it actually is going to fit on different size babies. That is not part of safety testing. The safety testing is just really looking at like the composition, the durability, and the safety of the carrier as like a carrying item. And so it's an important piece, but it's the bare minimum. And so I think sometimes, we see these companies that are advertising safety tested 7 to 45 pounds, knowing that parents who don't know better are going to assume that, oh, it's safety tested for 7 pounds. So that means a 7 pound baby will fit. And no, that just means that's the minimum weight that it was safety tested for, period. Companies could set higher minimum weights if they wanted to. We have a couple on the market like Hope and Plum that's saying 10 pounds minimum for some of their carriers. So companies could alter that if they wanted to, but 7 to 45 or 7 to 35 is just industry standard right now. So that being said, I would look for safety testing on your carriers. That's important. If you get like a weird knockoff, no name brand and you can't find safety testing information, I would be wary of that because it means that we don't know if the buckles are going to hold up their integrity, if the carrier is not just going to rip open on you one day. So we want safety testing, but what we're looking for when it comes to fit of the carrier for your baby is can we check off the ABCs? And so, really, what I tell parents, if you're not sure if your baby fits, an easy checklist to just visually confirm the panel should come up no higher than the bottom of the ear. The panel should go no wider than the bends of the knees. So, if you put your baby in a carrier, their legs are being forced into extension because it's too wide, and the carrier is coming up onto the back of their head. They're too small for that carrier, especially if there's also additional large pockets of space in the side where they're low down in that carrier and now they're able to like tip sideways down into it. That's a recipe for infant harm. And, I think the best way for parents to know if their carrier is safe or not is to find a reputable source and learn as much as you can about safety and positioning for your baby. There's not a lot that you need to know. It's not an overwhelming amount of information. It's a very small checklist that you could memorize and you would be able to know that your baby was safe. And so that way, when you're assessing carrier fit, you can just look at something and be like, yes, no, very quickly. And that's the best way to do it. I know we learn so much new information as parents, and it's a lot to digest, but the same way you learn about safe sleep, you learn about car seat positioning, you learn about feeding, baby wearing safety should be on that list of things that you learn about if you're going to do it, because unfortunately, we can't always trust the manufacturers of any baby products to be making products that are truly safe and supportive for infants' development and their safety. And I hate that it's like that, but that is the current market.
Yeah. I think a lot of times parents think, okay, if it's on the market, then it must
Yeah,
be safe because it has made it to the market. And that's just simply not true.
not true.
I mean, I think there are some really unicorn markets like car seats. You don't have to do
Yeah,
too much research into car seats. They are incredibly regulated. Like one once it is on the market, as long as it is a reputable brand, you can guarantee that it is safe for your baby. Unfortunately, things like crib mattresses and
Mm.
wearing products, they are not the same. They're not as regulated as something as, say, a car seat would be.
Right.
Okay, I have two questions that come up continuously,
Okay.
and I find myself getting a little snarky about them because, I want to just shake these parents and be like, come
Yeah.
on, baby wearing is so good. I don't want you to get caught up in this misinformation. And so
Right.
I'm going to let you answer it so that we can, help educate parents and I don't have to be snarky about it. The number one question that I get is my baby hates the carrier. I put them in
Yeah.
there and they cry and they just hate it. So I'm not gonna baby wear. We know that's not true. Babies don't like change. They are creatures of habit. So if you haven't been routinely wearing since birth and you're just now introducing it, your baby's gonna have a little bit of a learning curve. Help
Yeah.
parents understand and maybe share some tips on what they can do to help ease their baby into baby wearing if their baby has a little protesting in the beginning.
Yeah, so first I want to share that they did a study where I think the average time that it took a parent to decide that their baby hated a carrier from them like crying or fussing was less than 10 seconds.
Oh
It was like
my
7
goodness.
seconds. And I get it because I remember like when my son would like, scream at me when he was a newborn, how like activating that is for your nervous system and how you immediately just want to be like, nope, 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 nope. And you want them to stop crying. But that's not very long. That's not, as an adult, I can't do something for 10 seconds and decide whether I like it or not. And so I think just being willing to like push through initial resistance, knowing that it's like going to benefit them. Like they cry during a diaper change, you don't stop changing their diaper mid diaper change and leave them in poop, right? Like you clean their diaper because that's what's best for them. So I think just encouraging parents to be willing to let it be a little difficult the first time or two is worth it. Put some headphones in, put your favorite music on. You don't need to listen to them cry and fuss until you get them in the carrier correctly. You're not a bad parent for supporting your own sensory regulation and like doing things that you need to do to feel good. But the other thing that I tell people is there's almost always two factors going on. If a baby doesn't like a carrier, a lot of times it's fit. And it might be a very small change, feels like a small change. A big one I see is a lot of parents don't do a little hip scoop at the end to do a pelvic tuck. And so there are babies who they're like, but they're high on my chest, the carrier's snug, it feels comfortable for me, but they're screaming. And I'm like, yeah, but their hips are tilted just a little bit too far back. Tilt them and it's, when you sink down into a chair and you're like finally comfy, they'll do the little pelvic tuck and their baby just settles completely. And so a lot of times it's a fit issue. Either baby feels overly tightened, their hips are not properly positioned, or they feel too loose and they feel like they're going to fall. And so that's why they're fussing. The other thing is it might be a factor with the baby. Maybe they're hungry, maybe their diaper is wet, maybe they're overly tired, maybe they were enjoying another activity and you just pulled them away from it and put them in a carrier. Maybe they just woke up from a nap and they're still groggy. So, when you start baby wearing, try to do it in like an ideal scenario if you can. Make sure baby is fed, make sure their diaper is changed, make sure that they're like in the middle of like their wake window or whatever for that period of time. They're not too tired, but they're not just freshly groggy either. And then also make sure that there's not something going on with their body that's making them be uncomfortable and unable to tolerate that spread squat flex position. So if we have babies with reflux, we have babies with extensor tone, we have babies with torticollis, sometimes those babies have a really hard time tolerating the carrier until we get resolution of that root cause. And so if you have a baby who is fighting the carrier and also has plagiocephaly, torticollis, and reflux, you'll probably find that as you resolve those issues, they like being worn because every baby likes to be held. Every baby likes to be close to their parent, and the carrier is just a tool to do that. I've never met a baby that didn't want to be held by their parents. And so, if the carrier truly is feeling like the issue, if you've optimized the fit and your baby is still freaking out, it's probably a personal factor with the baby that we need to figure out how to help them be more comfortable in their body so that they can enjoy baby wearing. That being said, if there's nothing going wrong and it's truly just like you waited until 4 or 5 months and now your baby's a wiggle worm and they're fighting you in the carrier, go outside. Go outside, sing, dance, make sure you're feeling calm and regulated so they're not picking up on your like freak out frustration vibes and you're just like building off of each other. We have to co-regulate. We have to regulate first. I'm a big fan of a sip of cold water, a bite of a crunchy snack, and some music before I try and do something that I know is going to stress me out. Doing that and then getting help. If you're like, the carrier is not working, there are hundreds of baby wearing consultants all over the US, all over the world that like we do this for a job. We're trained. We've had hundreds of fussy crying babies that have ended up loving baby wearing. I had a consultation a month ago with a baby who was 8 months old, hadn't baby worn. They stopped wearing him at like 2 or 3 months old because he hated it, and they're rocking the carrier after one session. They were like, he's a different baby. We wear him to the grocery store, we wear him to naps. It's incredible. It just literally took, I think we made 3 or 4 adjustments to the carrier, and that was it. And now it's a baby that loves being worn. I think just sticking with it, figuring out why your baby is protesting and being willing to like troubleshoot is really what's going to give you success. But every baby likes to be near their parent and every baby likes to be held. So every baby can be worn.
I love that so much. That's also my philosophy is like I feel the same way about swaddling, which I know might be a little controversial since you're an OT, but I love swaddling and I think all babies like that proprioceptive input. They like that sensory pressure. They really crave it. And to combine that with being on their parent is just like chef's kiss for them. Okay, the second thing is about people who are afraid that baby wearing might make their baby clingy or spoiled. I love that you're giggling already because we know that spoiled babies are not a thing. But what about, I mean, that's a real fear. So, what do
Sure.
we say to parents who they're really concerned that they are going to create, I think, more of a bad habit, but they're
Sure.
labeling it as a clingy baby?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that we need to remember, sometimes that information, those opinions are coming from other generations who were told that when we didn't understand the science that, says that's not true, that you cannot spoil your baby by holding them too much. The other thing we need to think of is from an evolutionary standpoint, we are carry mammals. And for a while there, we were trying to treat our population like we were nesting animals, where we go put our babies down and we walk away and we go do things. But we're carry mammals. Our babies are designed to be on our bodies, at least for the first several months. And if you look at the contents of breast milk, you look at all of the ways that you pick a baby up and they pick their legs up, they're making themselves easier to be held because they're designed to be clinging to your body like monkeys or possums or other carry mammals do. And so, from an evolutionary standpoint, we know that like we are designed to carry our babies. And if that was not how it was supposed to be, then we wouldn't be designed that way. I don't think cavemen were worried about spoiling their babies by carrying them. But the other thing I will tell people is attachment breeds a secure and confident child. I had a son who was in the NICU. He got home from the NICU and it was like he decided that since he had been in the NICU that he was never going to be away from me ever again. And he was an exclusive contact napper and a carrier napper for 18 months of his life, which honestly, by the time he was 18 months old, I was like, ah,
Then you're all
but
dead.
now he's a 2.5-year old who is social, outgoing, like loves exploring new things, loves meeting new people, is like down for whatever, will do whatever, will fall asleep wherever, is just like a very confident, happy, bubbly child. And he is that way because we gave him a secure base of attachment and like a safety net. He knows if he's overwhelmed, he can come back to his parents and we're here to reassure him. And we did that through fostering that like continuous, we're here, we're available, we're a safe space, we've got you, we're supporting you, we're giving you the input that you need to be able to explore the world. And we are a children's safe space. There's nothing wrong with that. We're not spoiling them by giving them a parent who is around and supportive. you know I think, yeah, I think a lot of it just comes from people talking in your ear and telling you're going to spoil your baby through outdated information. And then, it's hard to not have those intrusive thoughts and those anxiety voices in our heads when we're new parents. But intuitively, if you want to carry your child and that's what feels great for you, you should do that.
Oh, I agree so much. So one of the thesis I wrote when graduating from my master's program was about the parent-child bond and
Yes.
how we can facilitate different attachments through the way
Mhm.
that we parent, and it starts from birth. And so
Yeah, it starts at birth.
wow, you're just like really allowing me to nerd out, which, obviously I love. Okay, something you've mentioned multiple times is breastfeeding. What kind of
Yeah.
benefits or association do we see between breastfeeding and baby wearing?
We see a boost in success in breastfeeding journeys. We see again that more frequent and responsive, like feeding on demand that we're looking for to really drive milk supply. And you can feed in the carrier. And so that makes it more accessible and makes it more empowering for a lot of people. If you're somewhere where you're like, I can't find a spot to put my baby down, or I want some privacy, you can use the tail of your ring sling. There's all these different things. The biggest thing I tell parents is that they're two separate skills. And so we want to make sure that we have mastered baby wearing and we want to make sure that we've mastered breastfeeding. So, like, you want to know that what an active swallow looks like, what a latch should look like. Is your baby starting to pop on and off? Are they starting to fall asleep? Like, you need to recognize those signs of an active feed versus like more of that suckling for comfort or starting to get sleepy. Because once a baby falls asleep in a carrier, we need to unlatch them and bring them back up into the high and tight position. It is super safe to breastfeed in a carrier, but it is a one-handed assist and it is something that requires constant connection and monitoring. It's not something where you just drop them down into the carrier and you just go about your day, because that's when accidents happen. So I love teaching breastfeeding in the carrier. I breastfed my own son hiking. I breastfed him like, all over the place. Like, we'd be in the mall, whatever. I'm like, he's in a carrier. I'm just gonna whatever, he's got to eat, like Christmas parties with friends where you don't want to have to go off into another room to like feed or whatever. You just feed them in the carrier and stay right there and enjoy your life. But, the biggest thing is just making sure that you know what to look for with that skill and with both of those skill sets separately so that everybody stays safe and supportive. But it's a great tool to use if you are, hoping to boost your breastfeeding journey, if you're having any struggles with it, or you're just hoping to prolong it, or whatever your goal is. So,
I love that so much. Okay, I want to make a little shift to toddler wearing, which I think
yeah.
people are really intimidated by. It's a bigger child. You can't wear them in a wrap. They're, possibly a little bit more difficult to get into a carrier. So, what do we need to know about toddler wearing? And I think I'm specifically interested in back wearing your
Yeah.
toddler.
Yeah, so I will say if your kid is a kid who's been worn like since birth, odds are they're gonna love it as a toddler. My son is almost 2.5, and he will bring me a carrier and say, and he like, Mama care, Mama ring sling, Mama care. So I mean, he will feel like, when he was teething or whatever, he would bring me carriers and be like, put me in. I need to snuggle. And, a lot of times if you have been wearing consistently, like that's something that's a positive, happy, fun experience for your toddler. And so they're going to be willing participants. Now, that being said, every once in a while you do get a toddler who like is fighting a nap or whatever, and they're fighting you, into the carrier. So I think the biggest thing there is like to have a moment of connection before you just sling them into a carrier, right? Like, especially our 2 or 3 year olds who are able to have maybe a little conversation about feelings, like telling them like, hey, I'm putting you in a carrier because you're tired and I want to give you a hug. Like having those, or letting them pick a carrier so that they have some of that choice, can help to facilitate an easier transition for both of you. But yeah, as far as back carrying goes, you've got so many options. You can use a woven wrap and do all kinds of fun, like reinforced like double hammock carries. There's even like some Jordan's carries. They're not mine. I didn't make them, but like I love doing them because I'm like, that's me. There's all sorts of fun carries you can get in with woven wraps. And that's nice for toddlerhood because you can just add more layers as you need more support. Or they make toddler specific buckle carriers. Typically, they start at around 25 pounds or 2T clothing, and they go up to 60 pounds. There are a couple for like kids who are like wheelchair users that, need to sometimes be carried to go other places. There's like a Kinder Pack Max that goes up to 90 pounds. But, they can be used as mobility aids too. And the biggest thing is just having fun and practicing over like a safe surface when you start, hook up with a consultant, watch a YouTube video, have, a friend spot you or whatever, but stand over a bed or a couch and just get used to like slinging them around onto your back. If you've been wearing them on your front this whole time, you're comfortable with your carrier, they're comfortable being worn. It's not as scary or as intimidating as it seems. It's pretty easy to just get them around back there. The biggest thing that I tell people too is if you've been wearing them this whole time, your body's going to be used to it. Your body might not handle 30 pounds on your front because that's a lot of weight to be hanging off the front of your body, but back carrying is the most ergonomic position. And so, yeah, my toddler's 31 pounds. I can wear him for 3-ish hours before I feel fatigue, really, at this point, because I've been wearing him his entire life. So we've been doing functional, progressive strength training and increasing the weight load this entire time. And so your body is made to carry your child. And so if you've been carrying them this whole time, like you can continue to carry them until one or both of you decide that you don't want to do that anymore. Even toddlers who walk, they get tired and they want to be held, or you go somewhere where it's maybe not safe for them to be walking, or you're like at an airport and you need to walk faster than your toddler can walk. There's always times that you're going to carry your 1, 2, 3-year old child. Like, why not use a carrier and make it more ergonomic for both of you, and then you have your hands free and you can do other things. So lots of benefits to toddler wearing.
Nice. Okay, and then what about tandem wearing? So you have
Yeah.
a 2 or 3-year-old, and now you have a brand new baby. So you're putting your baby on your front, toddler on your back. Any tips for that?
I would say just in the early days of postpartum recovery, just listen to your body. Like you can wear through pregnancy, you can wear, when you're ready postpartum. If you're used to carrying your toddler, that's not a strain load, but also the first few weeks postpartum, right? Like we do want to be mindful of the fact that we're like recovering from, our uterus and our placenta and all of that stuff, all of the birth processes. If you've had a C-section, you've had surgery that you're recovering from. So I think, being mindful of it in the early weeks and just making sure that you're listening to your body and not putting too much strain on yourself in an effort to connect to both of your kids at the same time and prioritizing rest when you can. But yeah, you can tandem wear as much as you want. A lot of people do like a buckle carrier or a woven wrap on the back for the toddler, and then you could do a stretchy wrap, a buckle carrier, a med-eye, a ring sling. Some people do an ombu hemo on the back and med-eye on the front. I mean, you've got like endless combos, really, and it's super fun to be able to carry both of them. Like, I only have one kid, but I have worn my son on the back and worn someone else's kid on the front, and they'll be like holding hands and like passing snacks to each other. And, the toddler will be like singing a song to the baby. Like, it's so sweet and so fun. So, it's a really nice way to connect with everyone. It's just about finding the right carrier combo that works for all three of you.
I love that so much. Okay, and then you have that in between stage where you think your baby might be ready to go from, facing you to
Uh-huh.
forward facing outward. What
Uh-huh.
do parents need to know about looking for milestones that would indicate that it is safe for your baby to face
Yeah.
forward and that your baby is actually developmentally ready to be facing outwards in a carrier?
The first thing I'll say is that it's optional to world face. I think sometimes because of the way it's marketed, people feel like they have to do front inward facing, then they have to turn them out, and then they have to move them onto their back. And it's optional. Like, I didn't world face with my son because it didn't feel good on my body. It was more strain on me he was a heavy baby. He was 9 pounds at birth. And so it was just, by the time he was developmentally ready, he was too heavy for me to have him like hanging off facing out like that, because it is a different load than having them leaning in towards you. So know that you can skip it if that doesn't feel great to you. But if you want to world face or you think your baby would enjoy world facing, one, you should have a carrier that is explicitly designed for it and supportive for it. My two faves on the market right now that actually offer a decent level of support to the baby and their hips and their spine are the Ergo Baby Omni and the Tula Explorer. I like those because they allow a wide base of support, but they allow you to adjust the middle of the panel in so that it's not overly wide across the entire torso and the body. So sometimes we see some like softer buckle carriers that say that you can world face in them, but you get weird pockets of space on the side. Their hips just don't stay in the right position. So we want something with a little more structure, a little more beef to it that really is actually supportive of the baby so that you're both optimizing your ergonomics. But as far as the baby, you're looking for at least a tripod sit. Typically, this happens at minimum around 4.5 months. For some babies, it's closer to 6 months. So you want that tripod sit, and we want that because we want them to have enough trunk stability and enough muscle built up that they're not working super hard to keep themselves upright in the carrier. Because when they're facing in towards you, if they get tired, they can just lean into your body and they've got lots of space to rest. When they're facing out, the carrier stops, at like collarbone level or sometimes like arms out. And if they get tired, they're going to flop forward and there's nothing there to keep them safe. And so that's when we see some of that like positional asphyxiation risk. So we're looking for at minimum a tripod sit, and they need to be tall enough to clear the top of the panel. Even if they're tripod sitting, if you go to put them in the panel and the panel comes up to their nose or comes up to their mouth, that's not safe. That's not protective of their airway. And the biggest thing to look out for with just keeping them safe is monitor them. If they fall asleep, they need to be turned around immediately. They cannot sleep in world facing because they can slump forward very easily. And just look out for signs of overstimulation. Some babies don't tolerate world facing at all. Some babies love it for 30, 45 minutes. It's going to depend on your individual baby. I don't believe in putting the limit of 15 minutes on it, but I do believe in monitoring your baby and looking for clenched fists, rigidity, turning away, fussing, anything that might indicate that they're just like, or if they're like zoned out and they're just like, whoa, okay, they're overstimulated, and let's turn them back inside so that they can take a break and kind of turn their face into you and get some comfort before they continue to explore the world. So I think it's putting these like arbitrary time limits on things doesn't help people actually learn what they're looking for to support their baby. But I think the intention in that was to just like limit the risk in general of overstimulation. But I mean, it just depends on the baby. So if they're tripod sitting, they're tall enough, you've got a supportive carrier, you can give it a shot if it feels good for both of you. Just check in with your body and check in with your baby and make sure you're both still enjoying the experience and that you're both awake.
Okay, I have a couple of like quick shot questions
Yeah.
for you that I'd like to ask about your favorite carriers in specific scenarios.
Okay.
So, what is your favorite carrier for hot climates? Let's say Arizona or down south where we know it's going to be really hot, but we still want a baby wear.
I don't know that there's one specific carrier, but I would look for something with natural fibers. So you're looking for something thinner with a cotton, linen, hemp blend. Some great examples would be like the Beluga Baby makes the Cove carrier. It's a very thin body panel. That's a buckle carrier option that is nice and breathable for summer. There's a woven wrap company that makes a Shubra wrap that's like a very thin, gauzy woven wrap that's almost see-through, but still supportive for your baby. That's a great hot weather option. If you're looking at ring slings, choosing like a hemp blend or like a cotton linen blend would be a good choice for that. So I think the biggest thing is a breathable fiber. Sometimes we see like mesh being marketed as more breathable, but mesh is often made of polyester. And so it's actually not going to be oftentimes more breathable than a single layer of a truly like breathable natural fiber. I think mesh gets a little gimmicky. You've got this big bulky carrier with one strip of mesh in the middle. That's going to be way hotter than one thin layer of fabric.
God.
So
Yeah. Okay. What is your favorite ethical or organic brand of carriers?
it's just one. I do a top three.
Of course. Go for it.
Made here in the US, I would say Hope and Plum is a great one. They are manufactured in Minnesota. They pay their employees fair wages, like livable wages. They're small batch, slow produced. They only use natural fibers, and they are marketing their carriers in a way that's actually giving good safety information for parents. You will never see them like doing unsafe practices. They have higher weight limits on carriers where it's appropriate to have higher starting weight limits. So I love Hope and Plum for the US based, ethically manufactured. They've got ring slings, stretchy wraps, med eyes, and buckle carriers. So I mean that's like a great, and they're size inclusive as well. So like truly size inclusive, not just, oh, this like probably fits a lot of people. They make a short and a long length. They're actually size inclusive. So that's a great one if you're shopping in the US. I also really like Heritage Baby Designs. Kaylee is based out of Canada, but she is just doing incredible things with her carriers. Again, we've got, all natural fibers. She makes carriers that are like so thoughtfully designed and truly adjustable for like the lifespan. She's got stretchy wraps, ring slings, and then the Kin half buckle carrier is probably my favorite half buckle on the market right now. It fits from birth and it still fits my 2.5-year-old like comfortably. It is a great carrier, just really lovely. And then, oh gosh, I could just keep going. There's Love Held based out of South Carolina. She does ring slings and woven wraps. Again, you've got natural fibers. It's like just her cutting and producing and sewing and like washing and softening them by hand before she sends them to you. So that's a great company. And then you've got Beluga Baby out of Canada. Again, you're looking at the natural fibers, ethically produced, small batch. I could go on. There's so many great small businesses producing really lovely, like truly thoughtful, ethically designed and produced carriers, and they're paying attention to safety information for the babies and for the parents. I think looking into those small businesses is really the way to go right now if you're really looking for something that's like sustainably made and ethically sourced.
I love that. You guys know I love nothing more than to support a small business because as a small business myself, I just feel,
Yeah.
pass it forward. Okay, and then my last one, and you mentioned Hope and Plum is really good at this, but what about your favorite size inclusive, like truly size inclusive for people in bigger bodies, but also people in taller bodies and maybe have partners who are different sizes than them, and this family is looking to invest in only one carrier if possible?
Yeah, so I mean, of course, you could go for like ring slings or woven wraps for through the lifespan. Like those are going to go between multiple caregivers really easily. You could also go for it, like I said, Hope and Plum does a short and a long length. And then there are carriers companies out there like Kinder Pack does like a short strap and a long strap version. There are smaller businesses that will add on like extra padding or takeaway padding. Integra does this, Kinder Pack does this. Keep Closer will do a custom length for you if you need. Love Held will do custom lengths on the ring slings if you need that. There are some of the more accessible. I feel like Tula overall is like a more mainstream, larger company that does offer like belt extenders and things like that. You can go that direction as well, but buckle carriers in general just seem to be a little less, if you're moving between caregivers, a lot of times if you have very different sized bodies, you will probably want two separate carriers to. So I think going for something more along the lines of a med dye, a woven wrap, a ring sling, something like that is going to be your best bet if you're really looking for like a one-stop shop. Lenny Lamb out of Europe, they're another good one that you can talk to about different sizes and things like that. So
What do you feel about Wild Bird?
I like that they do different size carriers. They have a short and a long length for the buckle wrap and the aerial buckle carrier. I think they're an okay intro brand for a lot of people. I do see clients who struggle with the fit of the straps. It's like the waistband fits, but the straps don't always sit nice on them. And it's worth noting that like their new buckle wrap is newborn friendly, but the aerial buckle is not newborn safe,
Hmm.
in my opinion.
Okay, and what about Baby Catan?
Baby Catan, they're safe if you can find the right size for your body. They are so hard to get sized correctly. They come in like extra small, medium, large, and it is so hard to get an actual fit that fits the baby throughout like multiple sizes and also fits the adult, especially if your body is changing postpartum and things like that. And the other concern I have with them is they've shown a lot of like really strange and unsafe fits in their marketing. So I hesitate to recommend them to clients. If a client already has one and it's fitting for them, like we can get a good fit, but it's not one that I typically recommend to my clients because it's not truly any easier than other carrier options on the market. And I have concerns about the brand's concern for safety just based on some of the marketing that I see online.
Yeah, that's really good to know. I mean, if the brand itself is not going to exhibit safe carrying, it definitely should give you a little bit of pause when selecting
Yeah.
that brand for sure. Okay, and then my final scenario is pool wearing. So what about in the
Yeah.
summertime, wearing not necessarily a new newborn, but a tinier baby that you don't want to leave
Hmm.
on the shore or you don't want to leave on the side and you want to be in the pool either for
Yeah.
yourself or for older children? Are there, water safe
Mhm.
baby carrying carriers that we should look at?
There are water safe carriers. Integra makes the Integra Solar, which is a lovely buckle option. Hope and Plum, their hemp blend ring slings are water friendly. Love Held makes a rustic ring sling that's water friendly. All of the Aloha and Light carriers are like an eco silk hemp blend. They're all water friendly. They have some structured carriers and some wraps and some slings. So you've got like any mesh ring slings that are out there, like Gustine makes one, Beachfront Baby makes mesh medis and wraps and ring slings. So you've definitely got lots of options. Again, you just want to confirm that the manufacturer has like made them specifically for water use. Like I would not get in the pool with an Ergo Baby or a Solly wrap or something because they're not made to be in the water. They're not tested, to like the fabric integrity is not tested to hold up in the water like that. So just making sure that you've got one explicitly designed for water. And then the biggest thing is just being mindful of safety. I tell parents when you get in the water is a time to check in on carrier fit. And when you get out of the water and you're drying back off, that's another time to check in on carrier fit because sometimes things shift around, as things get wet or they dry, the buoyancy of baby's bottom might cause them to sit up a little bit differently. And I generally recommend only going up to about like your hip if you have your baby in. So like maybe their legs and their butt get in the water, but you would not want like the water coming up onto their back or, you know, God forbid, higher up. You want to wear them on your front so that you can monitor them and you want to wear them facing in towards you. There are a couple like water carrier brands that are advertising like really unsafe scenarios with like world facing and like splashing and things like that. And I'm like, no, we don't want to do that. So facing in towards you, hip height, and then calm water. So not the ocean with a bunch of waves or not like a fast moving river where you could slip and get like swept. So like a splash pad, a kiddie pool, a pool where you have your feet firmly on the bottom. Maybe if you're walking along the beach and your feet are in the water, but you're not in the water, like those are all, if you want to shower with them, say they're congested and like you go sit in the hot shower and let the steam, help with the congestion. Those are all great scenarios for baby wearing. If you need a life vest, you should not be baby wearing them. So, like a boat, you should not like have them attached to you because if something happens and you capsize or whatever, you want them in their own life vest, not attached to your body, so you can both float independently. So, same thing for like water slides and stuff. I would not wear like down a water slide or a slip and slide or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Water safety is uber important. I am a former lifeguard, but I always say like once a lifeguard,
Yeah.
always a lifeguard. So very much ingrained into my
Yeah.
DNA.
And I know some pools, like people have gotten pushback on wearing their babies in pools with lifeguards because the lifeguards, I don't know about that. What if you fall and then your baby goes underwater with you? So I think also respecting whatever the rules of your local pool are too, because it is possible that they might say no.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Oh my gosh, Jordan, this has been so good, so informative, and just absolutely fascinating to hear the data and the science behind baby wearing and how we can do it safely and how we can facilitate it to make our lives easier, but also give our babies so much more support. If parents were listening and you had just one takeaway from them or for them about baby wearing, what would that be?
I would say that everyone can baby wear, and that it's important to empower yourself with the knowledge so that you can rely on yourself for safety and positioning instead of relying on certain carriers to do that for you. So just know that if you want to baby wear, there are not body types that cannot baby wear. There are not situations where you cannot baby wear. If you want to baby wear, it can happen, and it's worth investing in some knowledge and some education to make sure that you feel good about doing it regardless of the scenario.
I love that so much. Thank you so much for being here. If people wanted to connect with you on social media, learn from you, sign up for a consult with you, how can people connect with you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty responsive on Instagram, so I'm at thebabywearing.ot on there. DMing me is a great way to get a hold of me. I also have all of my links for like my website, my booking website, all of that is in my bio on Instagram as well. Or you can go to motherhoodtherapyservices.com and you can book that way and learn more about my services. But honestly, I'm on Instagram. That's a great way to just shoot me a message and we can get a consultation set up that way. Or if you are wondering if I have videos on a certain topic, I've got highlights organized by carrier type. So that's a great place to go and do some learning.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here. All right, listeners, I hope that you are leaving today with some newfound inspiration and maybe some confidence if baby wearing has been something that you have stepped away from or you have been putting off. And I hope that if you are an avid baby wearer, maybe we opened your eyes to some new carriers that you want to try out, or you learned some tips and tricks to make it easier for you and your baby. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Be sure to follow Jordan on social media. And you can find me at Tranquility by Hee and at the.birth.lounge. Until next time, head to your app store and download the Birth Lounge app for evidence-based childbirth education and data-driven postpartum support delivered straight to your phone. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I love hanging out with you, and it is an honor to be your go-to gal when it comes to preparing for your baby. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please leave a 5-star review and tell others why they should be listening to the Birth Lounge podcast too. You deserve to have a birth that you love with a provider that values your autonomy and respects informed consent without all the trauma that you so commonly hear about on social media. New episodes air every Wednesday and Friday. Hit that follow button so you never miss an episode. I'm Hee, and this is the Birth Lounge Podcast.